Okay, Dreamer, please.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Finally, I'm able to review update notices, and today we are gonna have two new heroes. I'm sure some of you may have already watched the videos that have come out, but we're gonna review them anyway later. So we're gonna have Carl tomorrow. Carl is looking to be a very strong PvP unit, and possibly also a secondary farmer compared to Teo. Okay, so let's look at his skill set. So here he does single target damage with his basic attack, and when his basic attack is triggered twice, he will do additional damage equal to 130% of his physical attack one time. And he also applies, there's 30% chance to have a buff removal effect when he uses his basic attack. This is regardless of whether he aims for the target, I assume. It doesn't really say. I think his passive will say that he will always aim for he will prioritize the enemy with the highest attack, which will likely be the backline unit, right? And if you are facing other physical comms, usually we have been having Teo at the back, so the chance of him just casually buff removing Teo with his basic attack is gonna be decently, there's a chance. There's basically a chance there. So his design for his skill set design is kind of based on the lore, which I kind of appreciate. I think in the past we didn't really have such kind of designs, right? But yeah, this basically has the boom effect. I think many of the older players will be very familiar with the boom effect, and heroes with the boom effect usually are very good in farming as well. So something to keep in mind. So his first skill, this is the bottom skill. He deals damage equal to 60% of physical attack plus 8% of target's max HP 2 times. And also damage increases by up to 50% proportionally to the target's lost health. HP based damage limited to 75% of the caster's attack. So since this skill actually does damage based on the target's lost health, you probably want to use it as the second skill. Okay, or rather not use it too early, so you probably won't want to queue it in your PvP that soon. Okay, so you really want to let the AI use this later on, or if you're using him for farming, you can queue this skill as the second skill instead. Take note that this is a 2 times hit, and if you look to the left side of the screen, there's a unit that really benefits from allies having multi hits, right? We have Amelia here who does concussion, and if you guys remember, concussion is actually a stun effect, sort of like a stun effect, but however, every time the enemy that is inflicted with concussion is being hit with a multi-hit attack, the duration increases. Okay, so there's a potential chance in using Amelia here with Carl and combining their skills together, especially with Kagura. I think she does a lot of multi-hits as well. So there you go, you already have a very strong physical team with the past 2 heroes from the previous update that is going to be formed. So you have a very high chance of locking a certain enemy, the enemy with the highest defense, I believe, okay, for Amelia, and that will actually cause them to be permanently not be able to attack or not be able to use skills, which is very powerful. Again, if you look at his skill set, it is very much catered to counter the tank team, which has been around for several months in the Korea server, and even in global server. I think we're almost at the 1 month mark, right? And tank teams are dominating the PvP as well. Now if you look at the tank teams, they usually have 2 healers. They have Alice and Lina. Lina and Alice both scale off HP, so usually these units will have pretty high HP percentage scalings from their weapons, probably with the block rate increase on their armor. So regardless of that, being able to do damage based on the target's max HP allows Carl to cripple the healers very quickly. And then you also have Kagura there to be able to nerf healing amount, right? And then you have Amelia here, who is likely gonna aim for the highest defense unit, which is gonna be Rudy most of the time, if I'm not wrong. So your Rudy won't be able to cleanse if your Rudy is the one that is being the target of the concussion, right? And then what else? There's just a lot of things going on. You also have the boom effect, right? The boom effect does damage equal to his physical attack, but I'm not too sure if this boom effect actually has a crit chance or no crit chance. Yeah, I cannot be sure about that, but we'll see, okay? So his top skill has 100% chance to inflict 2 buff removals, and then he also does piercing damage equal to 70% of physical attack 2 times. So this one basically goes through your immunities, and currently heroes with immunities will include your Yuxun, probably Dylan's if he's used. Yeah, but I think with Carl you may also see Dylan's being used, or Eileen. They may come back into the meta as well to buff his damage output. And you may see a variety of physical teams being used, physical units being used. So if you were to look as well, his skill enhancement basically increases the damage multipliers, and his T6 adds ignore defense. I will assume that the ignore defense part will be the same as the other units, which is 40%. Now moving on to his passive, he does give himself a crit rate boost of 27%. This 27% I think is quite significant because he is a damage dealer after all, and you definitely want him to crit. The only thing is crit rate is being countered by block rate. Especially in the higher tier PvP, I'm sure that there are many players who have geared their tank teams with block rate. So the crit rate crit damage won't actually happen, and then that will be a time where we can assess whether Carl is really that strong against the tank teams, as in whether his raw damage is going to be good, or maybe he's only relying on that boom effect or the max HP based damage that he's dishing out. Okay, and if there's 3 attack heroes on his team, he is able to grant all damage nullification on himself for 3 hits. And then he also applies Eyes of the Strong on the enemies with the highest attack, usually as I mentioned, the one on the backline, and upon using his skills, extra damage is dealt to the target. All enemies, he also deals defense ignoring damage equal to 23% of the target's max HP 1 time upon using any attack 2 times. Okay, wait, I need to go back to his basic attack. Okay, so this is not really a boom effect. The boom effect is in the passive. This extra damage is really just hitting the single enemy. So his boom effect is actually the one that does damage equal to the target's max HP. 23% of the target's max HP is a lot. It's more than 1/5. So within 5 hits, he will be able to kill off the enemy if he does any attack twice. So very, very strong. In fact, possibly you will want him to use both his skills instantly at the start of the battle. So you probably will use something like Kagura's Petrify or Eileen's Shock to go first to at least immobilize your enemies, and then you will use his top skill and then the bottom skill to do all the damage that he can, and then inflict this extra boom damage on the enemies. Pretty strong. When enhanced, his damage nullification ends after taking 4 hits, so this is a very good enhancement. It basically keeps Carl alive a little longer, and also when skill enhancement effect is applied, all damage nullification granted by T2 effect will increase to 4 hits. Here. Grants all damage nullification when HP falls to 70%. Oh. So I think he gains damage nullification again when his HP falls to 70%. So yeah, so he basically shields himself again, which is very important because I think he is a glass cannon. Okay, based on the way he's designed, I'm pretty sure he's a glass cannon, and he will need all the nullification that he needs, that he can get in order to survive well. I think Carl, if without all these damage nullification, it's just gonna pop. And there's a chance that you may also one-shot him after his first initial 3 damage nullification expires. So we never know, we really don't know at this point in time. So I'm just gonna show you guys Carl's skill effects. I think I watched this earlier. I think the skill effects do pretty good justice to the old Carl's effects. So I'm really happy about that. There's even the crows, and this part he looks like he's going down the Infinity Castle. So I could almost hear the Demon Slayer soundtrack playing when that happened. But yeah, very very cool animations. I really like that, and they even included the crows in the animation, so that's a very nice touch. Next up, we're gonna look at Aquila. So Aquila is a night crow, and she is a tank, okay, as how she was supposed to be anyway. So she is in fact partially HP scaling based on whatever we see here, her basic attack. Scales off both physical attack and her max HP, and upon enhancement, it not only increases the damage, it also grants a barrier to the ally with the lowest HP, excluding herself. So pretty good enhancement here as well. And then for her bottom skill, all enemies, it hits all enemies. She is able to not only just do damage, but each attack reduces the target's death turn by 1 turn, 60% chance, this is very high. 100% chance to inflict weakness hit chance reduction. So basically this is the first unit that has a counter to weakness hit, because if you guys realize, there has been no counter to weakness hit at all in the game so far. You probably have block to counter crit, but there's no other stat in the game that counters weakness hit, right? So countering weakness hit chance allows your team to do better on top of having the block, which I assume that dev team or that tank team that you are running will already be using. So pretty good additional support for the tank team in that sense, and the dev team as well. And being able to reduce the target's death turn by 1 turn is huge for the dev team, because it allows them to kill the enemy team faster, provided that the death actually lands. So those who manage to get Rosie, which I mentioned in my 7 Nights of O video, those who manage to get Rosie, you should be very very happy that you got Rosie right now, because I do see the dev team coming back, and I think the dev team now has a very strong support. Even if you don't have Rosie, I don't think you need to be so sad, because if you do have Chris and Nox as well, then I think these 3 can also form a pretty decent dev team. And even if you don't use this dev team in PvP, dev teams are cheesing through adventure, cheesing through your nightmare, also cheesing through your infinite tower as well. So these are all very viable areas you can use dev teams, and Aquila basically makes it more efficient to use a dev team. In fact, if you enhance her, which is going to be very beneficial, all the stats here that you see are going to increase, and death turn reduction rate is 70%. And if you have Rosie on your field, okay, this percentage chance, I believe it is a effect probability, so Rosie is going to increase this effect probability to 90%, because Rosie only increases effect probability for tank and universal allies, right? And here we have a new tank, so 90% chance to reduce the death turn, which is insane. Next, we have a top skill which also does damage based on physical attack and max HP. 35% to inflict death, not very high I would say, but of course this is balanced because she's not exactly the death unit, which when I think about it, I remember Aquila not being a death unit at all. Aquila was more of a very weird tank. If you guys remember from the early days, Aquila used to be able to be used when certain conditions were met for offensive teams or magic teams, depending on where she was placed in the formation. But I guess that was too complicated and they decided to just remove all of that. The dev team, well, and if you guys actually play 7 Knights 2, you'll remember that there was a tank as well that also played on dev, which is like Wall Yong. Wall Yong was also a tank dev unit, and I think they just decided to put all of this into this new design Aquila, which I'm not mad about. I think it's pretty fresh, and dev team has fallen off the meta for sure, so I would really be interested to see how Aquila helps in that aspect. And not only that, I think many of you guys will have realized that dev teams use Rudy as one of the best tanks for them to survive well, on top of Rosie, Chris, Nox, and maybe Yuxun or something. Yeah, so her having the link here basically replaces Rudy. Okay, she is a much better tank for the dev team compared to Rudy in that sense. And her skill enhancement also has very beneficial effects, basically the link reduction rate and the death chance increases by 5% to 40%. But not only that, her passive actually inflicts effect resist reduction. Effect resist reduction was probably something I think only Mercure had. Using them on the dev team back then wasn't probably the most efficient kind of lineup you would have, because they wouldn't benefit from Rosie, right? And they didn't have death themselves. So again, Aquila here having these aspects to help the dev team is going to be very, very good. Not only that, she can heal herself when her HP falls below 50%, so some sustenance there. You probably want a healer on the dev team maybe to prolong your death counts. So this could be very good. T2 Aquila is gonna heal herself more times, which is great. And T6 Aquila, wow, reduce her own cooldown when an enemy falls in battle. Could be very efficient because we're talking about the dev team here. We're not talking about, killing by usual means of damage. So if the enemy falls here, especially with her death turn reduction, this could be very useful, but we don't have the exact time or skill cooldowns reflected on the patch notes, so we cannot really say for sure how efficient this can really speed things up. Let's look at her skill animations. So yeah, I remember her. Actually, when she was released back then, she had Awakened skill already. I remember her doing that crazy thing where she flies down from the sky. But this animation of the shield is amazing. Really, really amazing. I remember it used to be so basic, where she just forms the shield and, not much impact. Okay, but now she looks amazing and I really love it. Okay, what else do we have for this patch? We have a new story event, so there is a very high chance we could get Aquila for free from there, hopefully. Carl is free from the ticket. I'll flash the code later on for you guys. We have 3 new costumes. This looks great for Mercure, like really good. So much better than his T2 costume. This also looks great for Colt. The white hair, the entire red outfit, very, very nice. I think these are recolor costumes, so they should be pretty cheap. And then we also have Sylvester. He looks amazing. He's a common though. Yeah, I think they're all recolor costumes, so they will be going at 500 rupees. So if you like these units, get them. New profile portraits for uncommon great costumes. Okay, we have Guild War being released from tomorrow onwards. So many of you guys have asked me about Guild War. Maybe not that much, but there's definitely some questions about Guild War. Basically for Guild War, you need to have 5 defense teams, as you can see, 3 heroes each and 1 pet. and your guild leaders will be adding the defense team and editing how they are placed. Okay, for in the towers later on. I think there's an image here. There is no image. Okay, I'm sorry. So all the teams that you submit will be placed in towers, and each tower will have a certain number of teams. So when you engage in guild war, you will be really taking off one team at a time. Okay, so if you think about it, each player has 5 teams. In a guild of 30 members, there should be 150 teams to go through. And likewise, when you fight the enemy, you will be able to pick teams, you'll be able to pick heroes based on what you have. You also need to have 5 offense teams of 3 units each, 3 heroes each, to counter whatever enemy team that you want to counter. You can choose any of the enemies, up to you, unless your guild leader assigns. So you basically have to fight inwards. But I remember there's something called barricades, where if there's a lack of members in your guild or the enemy guild, then these empty slots, okay, these empty teams that were not submitted will be replaced with barricades, and the enemy can just easily push the barricade down and consider that a win. So I think these are not very important to know. Basically, you are just gonna it's just about calculation and getting rewards, which, you know, rewards are more important. But yeah, this will, maybe the timeline is important for some of the guild leaders to know. I think guild members tend not to care too much about the guild times. That's how real it is. But yeah, so take note. And then we are getting packs and 7k pass re-release, and I think that's about it. So this is not a big update, but we do have 2 pretty decent heroes and pretty interesting heroes that can really shake up the meta. And again, you know, there are PvP heroes mainly. Of course, they could see use in PvE. I would assume Aquila is going to be a very good PvE unit, and maybe Khal as well, because as you know, the more you play in Adventure, the higher amount of HP the enemy has. So there's very high chance that Khal's boom damage can do significant damage. And probably if you pair this with Mercure, or maybe you put Khal in a magic team, I'm not too sure if that extra boom attack is going to be considered a follow-up attack that will also proc Mercure's magic reflux. So these could be things that, you know, once Khal is out, we can experiment with them and see how that goes. So a lot of things can change potentially, which is very exciting. So let me know what you guys think of Khal and Aquila in the comments. And if you like this analysis, do let me know as well. I try to think of more things on the spot when I record the video, because there's barely any editing done for this video. So let me know, and thank you so much, and stay tuned for more videos. Thank you so much, and see you!